Amanda Lannert, thank you so much for joining me today. I appreciate it. How's everything going?
Hanging in there, taking it day by day, trying to not go stir crazy, and never not leading with gratitude that my family's healthy, we're doing okay, hanging in there.
Good, good. I'm glad to hear that. And obviously, per what we said earlier, I just wanted to ask you right now, as the CEO of JellyVision, what's your main focus right now during this
Uh,
crisis?
Making sure, number one, making sure our people are safe, that they're healthy, that they are practicing all of the right strategies of avoidance, and if they're sick, that they have access to the care and supplies that they need. Number one, we got to keep our people safe. A far second is keeping the business as safe as possible, trying to mitigate impact, to find new opportunity, to navigate day in and day out when there is no more business as usual. And I mean, customers went from thriving to having zero revenue literally overnight. Employees went from working in a comfortable office to trying to homeschool kids, or being very alone in a totally remote environment, basically overnight. And nobody knows how long this is going to last, or how grave the impacts will be from a health perspective, from a business perspective, economic perspective. And so I think we're just all trying to navigate with the ambiguity and maintaining some great communication and perspective in really scary times.
How are you keeping the communication going with the rest of your team?
So I am trying to pulse out communication very frequently, but we are a company that uses Zoom and Slack and all the remote technologies anyway. So while day to day has been an inconvenience or a hardship, depending on where you are in the scale, the technologies that we're using to stay in touch are very much the same ones we've always used: email, Slack, Zoom, and other remote technologies. And I'm just trying to keep the information flowing. I think in ambiguous, scary times, the first thing I do is admit these are scary, ambiguous times.
Yeah.
Nobody has the answers. Nobody knows. Your life has been turned upside down. Let's just acknowledge that there's no business as usual. The second thing is we are trying to provide as much information showing the patterns that we're seeing, looking at what historians and economists are saying, trying to parse the signal from the noise from a news perspective, and just give people information they need to get through the day. And then showing a lot of grace, trying to have a sense of humor to people we talk to, trying to make sure people have, a balanced perspective to live their turned upside down lives, while making sure that we are in a place where we can get through this intact as best we can.
Great. Obviously, there's a lot of leaders at companies that don't know what to do right now. You've been through the 2001 recession, the 2009 recession, and now this one. So what?
9/11, the dot-com boom. Like I've been at JellyVision since 1942, give or take. So I've seen quite a bit. The reality is you got to go back to and say you got to control what you can control. And unfortunately, it's not that much. There's not that much the companies can control. If your business is in a sector that's impacted by a shelter in place order, you can't do anything until that, mandate is lifted. So I go back to sort of the principles of what you can control. And you can put your own, in the airlines, they say put your mask on first. You got to put your mask on first. You can control your diet. You can control exercise, and you can control how much time you invest in trying to let yourself sleep. And you got to put your mask on first, and you got to go the rituals. And I'd watched my own sort of like self-care routine start to slip royally. And I got to get back on track. You got to put your mask on first, and you've got to put energy into what you can control. And you can control your own, unless you're sick with the flu or sick otherwise. I think first things first is get yourself into a position to have the best energy, the best mental state, the best physical health you can. So I focus on food, exercise, and sleep. And then from there, I focus on clear communication, being as open and transparent as possible, but then also having a plan. I think it's really important, even if the plan is a bad one, having a plan, communicating the why, and keeping people as unsurprised as possible when, like, let's face it, I will admit it, I don't know what the bottom is going to look like, when it's going to happen. I don't know. And so we're constantly having to navigate through this ambiguity. and try to maintain a sense of humor at the same time. These are unprecedented times.
Well, I think you're one of the most transparent leaders I've ever met. But I think transparency is hard for a lot of other business leaders because they don't want to scare their employees. But at the same time, they want to be positive. Like, how do you walk that line? And I feel like ever since I've met you, you've always been. That's one of the things that I admire about you is the transparency factor. So, how do people that don't have the experience deal with it?
Here's what I would just say: we are at war. The world is at war with a virus. So you can't act like we're not. There's no employee who can't just like go on Twitter or read the news and not understand that we're at war. So I think first things first, don't try to BS through it. Don't act like you have the answers. Don't act like you have certainty. Don't act like you can predict what's going to happen. Acknowledge it, but then say, I am working on a plan. Here's how we are projecting the impact on the business. These are our contingency plans. This is how we're going to keep the lights on as best we can, and just kind of say, like, based on all the unknowns, here is what we think is going to happen, and here's what we're going to do about it. We just had an all hands meeting, and I admitted we don't know. There's uncertainty. I don't know what the government reaction is going to be. I don't know what work help there's going to be for unemployed workers. I don't know when companies are going to go back to business as usual or what the new usual will look like.
Yeah.
But have a plan, explain why, and then have contingencies to keep on your toes, because we're all just doing our best projections, aka guessing at this point, because there's just nothing but uncertainty.
Great. Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you for your time. I know you have a lot on your plate right now, and hopefully we'll all get through this together sooner than later.
I do have to say, if you look at the history of pandemics, there are all kinds of different ways to look at impact. Is it going to change the world forever? Are we going to come back slowly? Or are we going to have a down and then an up, sort of like an impact down and then an up? In the history of pandemics, they have always been V's, a down and then a back up. Not like life is forever changed. I believe if history is a good indicator of the future, which it often is, we will get through this. We will live to fight another day. We got to just have each other's backs, have unbelievable patience and perspective, and try to maintain our sense of humor. It's all we can do, but we will get through this.
Well said. Perfectly said. Thank you so much for your